The anime begins with our protagonist, Yukari Nijima, who, along with his best friend Yusuke Nisaka, promises not to get married due to government orders. The government forces them to marry someone of its choosing. In the midst of this, Masaki Takasaki appears, the girl Yukari has had feelings for since childhood. He's been in love with her since he was 5 years old, when one day at school, he noticed she needed an eraser. He gave her half of his eraser, and that's where it all began. Later, while having dinner, he's reminded that tomorrow is his birthday, and he'll receive the letter that will decide whom he will marry. This makes him nervous as he wants to stay in love with Masaki. Therefore, he decides to confess his feelings to her the next day at school. However, when he asks her, she doesn't remember the incident from their childhood. Nevertheless, Yukari persists and asks her to meet him in the park that night, which surprises her a bit. The hours pass, but there's no sign of her. Night falls, the police appear, and they tell him to go home. At this point, Yukari feels disappointed. However, Masaki appears just in time. They sit on a bench and start talking about the past. She admits that she lied and does remember the eraser incident from elementary school. Yukari sees how beautiful Masaki is and starts talking about himself, mentioning that he's not an outstanding student and that Nisaka helped him with his outfit to match hers. He also mentions how his parents worked hard to pay for his education. After this, he confesses his feelings to Masaki. However, when she starts crying, he apologizes. She takes out the eraser he lent her long ago in elementary school from her pocket and confesses that she's been in love with him all along. Masaki explains that when he lent her the eraser, he had noticed she needed one but took a long time to give it to her. She liked that he had put effort into it. She praises his kindness and starts feeling nervous as they talk. Yukari hugs her and confesses that he's been in love with her for a long time. He asks if they can kiss, and she agrees. However, just as they finish kissing, Yukari's phone rings. He realizes it's the government email with the decision about his future wife. The email states that his wife will be Masaki, but then his phone dies. Later, 2 government officials arrive with the letter, but it mentions the name Sanada Lilina instead of Masaki. Yukari insists it's a mistake, but they tell him it's final and there's no error. This deeply saddens Masaki. She congratulates him on his birthday and admits that she didn't actually want to come. She tells him that the moment they shared tonight will help her live for 70 years. She bids him farewell, starts running, and Yukari catches up to her, and they embrace. The next day, his parents tell him he'll be absent from school so he can meet his fiancée, but he manages to escape and go to school. However, he's quickly discovered. Masaki appears and asks him why he's at school. He tells her that he knows how he feels about her and that he doesn't want to marry a stranger. But Masaki confronts him and tells him that what happened in the park should be kept as a memory of the past. She says that if he understands, he should go and meet his wife. We find Yukari about to meet his future wife, and when he enters the room, he's surprised by how pretty she is. Later, everyone is sitting down trying to get to know each other. As we can see, Yukari wants nothing to do with anyone. Lilina mentions that she's in the literature club and asks Yukari which club he's in, but he's not paying attention. This annoys her, and she throws her jacket at him, telling him he has no manners. She says that they might not know each other, but he should at least try to be interested. She leaves in anger. Yukari starts searching for her, leans against a door, and sees Lilina sitting in a corner. He accidentally grabs her arm, and they both fall to the floor. She tells him that the marriage doesn't feel real, and Yukari realizes she feels the same way he does, but she at least tried. He apologizes for what happened, and unintentionally, he tells her that he's in love with a girl who rejected him, which is why he was distracted. Lilina responds by saying she wants to know more about that girl. Yukari tells her the whole story, and Lilina becomes fascinated, calling it very romantic. She starts asking him more questions, and he realizes she's very interested in romantic stories, as it's the first time someone has talked to her about these topics. She agrees to help him figure out what Masaki feels and why she changed her mind about Yukari, and they make amends. They agree to meet at Lilina's school. Yukari asks about her, and he's told she's in the infirmary. He finds her asleep there, having suffered from heat stroke. While Lilina changes her clothes, Yukari asks her if Sandamushi is her nickname, to which she becomes very nervous. Lilina tells him that before studying at this school, she had an illness, which caused her to join late. This difficulty made it hard for her to make friends, as she felt like she didn't fit in, and that's why they call her Sandamushi. After their conversation, Yukari sees Masaki and tells Lilina. She goes over to Masaki and introduces herself. While they talk, Lilina tells Masaki that she doesn't love Yukari and asks Masaki what she feels about him. Masaki responds that she likes his hair and such. They spend some time talking about Yukari. When they leave, they agree to meet again. This makes Lilina very happy, as she made her first friend and had a wonderful time. While with Nisaka, he asks Yukari if he's already been intimate with his wife, which makes Yukari nervous. Additionally, he remembers what Lilina said about kissing Masaki. Nisaka comments on Yukari's courage for going to a women's school to find Lilina and recalls the time they first met, when Nisaka was in trouble with another guy and Yukari helped by calling the teacher and the police. Nisaka laughs about Yukari trying to act brave. The next day, Yukari visits Lilina, who gets mad at him for being 20 minutes late. When they get to her room, they're surprised to find Masaki there, which makes Yukari very nervous. Masaki suggests leaving to avoid interfering, but Lilina becomes sad because the last time they were all talking together, there were no problems. Yukari thinks it's fine for them to all be together, but in the end, only Masaki talks, and they don't pay attention to Yukari, saying he lacks presence. Lilina suddenly tells Yukari to kiss Masaki, surprising everyone. Masaki is willing to go along with it, and Lilina reassures Yukari that it's okay, comparing it to a TV show for her. As Yukari and Masaki get closer, they both become nervous, and it seems Lilina is nervous too. As Masaki leaves, she tells Yukari that he should fall in love with her because she doesn't think she's the right one for him. She noticed his expressions when he's near Yukari, which makes Lilina extremely nervous. While they're walking, they run into Nisaka, and Yukari introduces him to Lilina. Nisaka says a few things to her that make her blush, and she calls him a bad guy. Yukari defends Nisaka, saying he's a good person and his friend. At school, after physical education class, they notice Nisaka has a fan club since he's popular with girls. However, they realize that it's all irrelevant since the government chooses your spouse, making popularity meaningless. While they walk, they encounter Masaki, but she and Nisaka exchange glances, hinting that they don't get along. Yukari spends time pondering why they have a strained relationship. As Yukari walks down the hallway, he meets Masaki, who tells him what she said to Lilina. Her words make Masaki nervous, and as they get closer, well, you know what happens. Even Nisaka accidentally catches them in the act. Afterward, Yukari asks Nisaka if he can talk to him. Nisaka tells him to wait until later. Later on, Yukari falls asleep at his desk, which Nisaka takes advantage of. At this point, we understand Nisaka's feelings for Yukari. The next day, Yukari has lunch with his parents and Lilina. They decide to enter Yukari's room, but Lilina notices it's messy and helps him clean it up. When they finish, she finds an old photo album. One of the photos is of Yukari with some friends, and he says he bought the album because Masaki was in the background. Lilina asks him when he fell in love with Masaki, and he tells her it was when he gave her the eraser and felt that he wanted to see her smile directed at him. Yukari then turns the question back to Lilina, and she recounts a time her heart raced when she saw an anatomical model in a hospital, quite odd. Later, Lilina asks if Yukari has kissed Masaki like he said he would. He admits that he has, but Lilina isn't satisfied with just once a day. She tries to make him do it better but accidentally trips over a book and falls on top of Yukari. Just then, government officials arrive to interview the couple. Both Yukari and Lilina are very nervous due to what happened earlier. The interviewer discusses the red string of science, a method of pairing couples through exams since childhood to match them in the future. They are asked about their feelings for each other, but both of them claim to be confused and not understand anything. After the officials leave, they inquire about Masaki, as her marriage notice has arrived. This saddens Yukari, but Lilina encourages him not to give up and promises to help him in any way necessary. She urges him not to give up on Masaki and to not let her see him sad. Later at school, Yukari notices that Masaki arrived late. He's willing to talk to her about the marriage notice, but it's difficult for him to approach the topic. Towards the end of the class, Yukari is assigned to help Masaki with some work. He eventually asks her about the notice, and she tells him that she didn't receive anything related to it. She explains that her family had some issues to deal with, and it had nothing to do with the marriage situation. This relieves Yukari. At the end of this, we see Masaki talking to a girl. The girl accuses Masaki of being a liar, to which Masaki responds that sometimes she has to lie to protect something she loves. She explains that she would do whatever it takes to safeguard it, even if what she's saying isn't directly related. Then we see Yukari on the phone with Lilina. She tells him about a camp organized by her mother, where Masaki will also be attending. This makes Yukari nervous, and he tries to convince Nisaka to go as well, so they won't be alone with the girls. It takes some effort, but Nisaka eventually agrees to join them. The next day, we see Yukari encountering Nisaka, but at the same time, Lilina and Masaki arrive. Lilina remembers Nisaka and questions why he's there since she doesn't like him at all. Suddenly, Yukari notices Masaki with Nisaka, which surprises him. As everyone travels on the train, Yukari asks Nisaka about Masaki, and he responds that nothing significant is happening. Once they're at the camp, they have to cook. Yukari assumes Nisaka is good at cooking, but in reality, he's quite terrible. Eventually, they manage to make curry without Nisaka's help. While Yukari searches for the girls, he finds them in swimsuits by the river. He tries to hide, but Lilina spots him and encourages him to come join them. Lilina slips and twists her ankle, so Yukari carries her back to the camp. However, Lilina insists on walking on her own until her father helps her by applying ice to her ankle to relieve the pain. Later, when everyone is asleep, Yukari asks Nisaka if he's hiding something, but Nisaka recalls their past interaction and becomes nervous. Before Nisaka can confess anything, Lilina interrupts, suggesting they test their courage by walking through the forest at night. She proposes that Yukari and Masaki go together, while she and Nisaka pair up. However, Nisaka admits he doesn't know what he's doing. While Masaki and Yukari walk, she tells him she's having fun with him. She asks if they can hold hands while they walk. Masaki spots a firefly, but as she goes to catch it, she slips on a downhill slope. She grabs Yukari's hand, and they both fall together. Although the fall isn't too severe, Masaki gets scared and clings to Yukari for a while. Kasaka continues talking with Lilina, telling her not to let Yukari and Masaki get too close since it would break the law. He explains that rejecting one's assigned partner could negatively affect Yukari's chances of getting into the universities he wants. To prevent this, Lilina decides to intervene. Suddenly, Kasaka notices the same firefly and goes to catch it. He stumbles upon Yukari and Masaki together, and an anxious Yukari assures him that nothing has happened. While walking, they encounter a beautiful sight of numerous fireflies lighting up the landscape by the river. Everyone is captivated by the scene except for Kasaka, who despises fireflies. In this mesmerizing moment, they all hold hands to appreciate the beauty before them. The next day, we see Lilina in the library, engrossed in her own work until someone calls out to her. Finally noticing, She sees a girl who wants to be her friend. It turns out the girl is the sister of the doctor who cared for Lilina when she was ill as a child. The girl expresses her desire to be friends, but Lilina is unsure what to talk about with her. Nevertheless, Lilina wants to try making a new friend other than Masaki. Meanwhile, Yukari and Dai walk through the halls and encounter their teacher, who informs them about special classes organized by the ministry. At the special classes, Dai introduces his partner, and when Yukari is asked about his partner's whereabouts, he says they might not show up. To everyone's surprise, Lilina arrives, regretting being late. Yukari notices that Lilina has let her hair down and tells her she looks pretty, causing her to blush. Lilina then surprises Yukari by giving him figures he loves, which makes him very happy. She also surprises him by giving her a cat-shaped figure, which she loves. During the class, they discuss intimate relationships and related topics. The instructors explain that their government-assigned partners are chosen through advanced research to ensure compatibility, comparing it to Cinderella and her glass slipper. The class progresses to show some slightly graphic images of couples, making Yukari and Lilina feel a bit nervous. Suddenly, Lilina starts to fantasize about Yukari, creating a tense atmosphere. However, a government employee interrupts, asking Yukari to choose between Lilina and Masaki. He informs them that they will be monitored from a secret room. The presentation concludes, and the presenter announces that everyone will spend the night in a room with their partners. This makes Yukari very nervous because not complying with the government's directives could have serious consequences. He decides to do what's right to avoid harming Lilina, so he impulsively embraces her. After some sweet moments, Lilina asks Yukari why he embraced her. Yukari explains that the government was monitoring the room, and they would have faced penalties if they didn't comply. Lilina finds this idea intriguing but ultimately dismisses it, saying that the government wouldn't go to such lengths as it goes against ethics and morality. She believes they were simply playing a prank, and even if it were true, that's not how things should be done. Yukari apologizes for what happened, but Lilina doesn't want him to touch her, feeling strange when she's around him. She asks him to stay away. However, the government representative reveals that it was all a lie to test whether Yukari would act with Lilina. The next day at school, Nisaka is practicing for a play with Masaki, where they're cast as Romeo and Juliet respectively. Nisaka was coerced by his teacher, who threatened to deduct 30% of his attendance if he refused. While Yukari helps with decorations, he accidentally injures his hand, leading him to the nurse's office. Masaki arrives later to check on him. Yukari admits that he hadn't talked to her since the camping trip, but in reality, she had been avoiding him to spare Lilina's feelings. Yukari tells Masaki that he might have hurt Lilina's feelings and promises to be more focused and less absent-minded to avoid further issues. Later, Masaki invites Lilina for hotcakes and inquires about Yukari, who has been feeling down lately. Lilina confesses that she feels conflicted about Yukari. She doesn't want to see him, but at the same time, she needs him. This concerns Masaki. While Yukari walks through the school, he encounters the government agent. Yukari confides in him about his situation with Lilina and his confusion about making her happy after what transpired. The agent shares a similar story of a boy dating a girl in school who received her assigned partner's notice. She told him she'd reject the assigned partner if he married her, but he hesitated due to potential consequences. He later regretted not listening to his feelings. This story helps Yukari realize he should listen to his feelings and invites Lilina to see the fireworks, a promise he made but didn't receive an answer for that day. The next morning, Yukari receives a letter from Lilina, where she forgives him for not replying earlier. She explains her feelings aren't clear yet and asks him to give his best effort at their school's cultural festival. This gives Yukari renewed enthusiasm to do his best. The next day, we see Masaki practicing for the play, and Yukari watches her with an enamored expression. Suddenly, they hear people asking for Kasaka, and Yukari volunteers to look for him. Once they find him, they discuss the costume designs for the play. Kasaka is assigned to play Juliet, but he shows no interest. Yukari follows Kasaka, who expresses his intention not to participate in the play. This saddens Yukari as he wanted to see Kasaka perform, even if he had to wear a dress. Kasaka storms off in frustration, but someone stops him. It's his father. While having lunch, Kasaka's father advises him not to ignore his friends. Yukari chimes in, saying everything is fine, which amuses Kasaka's father, as he didn't realize Kasaka had such quirky friends. Kasaka's father shares that Kasaka used to be popular and was in the soccer club. Kasaka excuses himself to go to the bathroom, and his father apologizes for his son's behavior, mentioning that Kasaka acts differently around Yukari and appreciates their friendship. He asks Yukari to look after Kasaka, as he doesn't have many friends who care about him like Yukari does. After lunch, Yukari asks Kasaka if he still won't play Juliet. Kasaka explains that he dislikes being the center of attention and finds the whole Romeo and Juliet story silly. Yukari remembers the government agent's words, telling him that Romeo and Juliet don't have to be like them, and what truly matters are their feelings. Yukari convinces Kasaka with this perspective, and he agrees to participate in the play as Juliet. Later, everyone is taking Kasaka's measurements for his costume, which makes him uncomfortable, especially with the whole class watching. As they prepare for the play, Yukari goes to deliver some items and encounters Masaki. She recites lines from the play, expressing her love for him as Romeo. While walking through the school, she asks if Yukari has fallen for Lelina, but he doesn't give a clear answer. Masaki confesses that she's been in love with him for a long time but feels down as she wasn't assigned to be his partner. Overwhelmed, she bursts into tears, and Yukari comforts her with a hug. Masaki admits she doesn't understand anything about love and is confused by her emotions. On the day of the festival, we see Yukari handing out flyers for the play, but as we can see, he's not having much luck. Suddenly, he spots Masaki dressed as Romeo, and he realizes how beautiful she looks. Soon, a friend of Masaki's arrives, someone Yukari had a previous incident with, and other friends point him out, making him uncomfortable. He flees and encounters Yajima, who works for the government. Yajima informs him that he looked into the pairing notification Yukari received on his phone, stating that his assigned spouse was Masaki. However, after examining the data, it was determined that his assigned wife is Lelina. This confuses Yukari because he saw Masaki's name in the notification. Yajima suggests that someone might have tampered with the notification data, and they don't rule out the possibility of an error, although there's no evidence so far. Later, Lelina arrives at the school to watch the play with her friend, but she's very nervous. Yukari crosses paths with Lelina while handing out pamphlets, and both of them become nervous seeing each other after a long time without contact. After giving her the flyer, Yukari rushes away. As he continues his tasks, Yukari sees Kasaka and asks if he's going to put on his costume for the play. Kasaka notices that Yukari is acting strangely and mentions Lelina's presence. Kasaka reassures Yukari that everything will be fine since Lelina came to see him. As the play draws near, Yukari offers his help but ends up messing things up, as usual. He sees Masaki getting ready for the performance and notices that she seems a bit sad. He talks to Nisaka, who's also involved in the play, and mentions that he thinks he hasn't been of much help. Nisaka contradicts him, saying that Yukari actually helped him make the decision to participate and play Juliet. He then shows Yukari his costume, leaving him surprised. Nisaka asks Yukari to watch the play to the end and take responsibility. Yukari arrives on time for the play, and it's a success that everyone enjoys. After the performance, Yukari looks for Nisaka to congratulate him, but he encounters Igarashi, Masaki's friend. She asks him about the pairing notification, and Yukari asks her if she knows anything about it. Igarashi reveals that his assigned partner is actually Masaki. Lelina overhears this and is shocked. She starts asking about this, but Igarashi only tells her that Masaki has something to protect, and if she needs to lie to take care of him, she will do it. Igarashi is willing to help her. Lilina becomes a bit sad as she thinks that her assignment with Yukari is a mistake, but he tells her that Yajima confirmed there's no error, which reassures Lilina. Suddenly, they become a bit nervous because they're conversing like they used to before the previous incident. Later, they encounter Masaki, and Lilina congratulates her on her great performance. Nisaka appears in a tricky situation, and Lilina mistakes him for another guy, complimenting his appearance, but once she realizes it's Nisaka, her opinion changes entirely. In no time, Nisaka's father and brother arrive. The brother teases him for his feminine outfit, while his father praises him. The father invites Yukari and his friends to his cousin's wedding as a token of gratitude for helping Nisaka. The next day, Yukari manages to obtain Igarashi's contact information, Masaki's friend, to learn more about the notifications. He sends her a message to see if they can become friends, but she immediately rejects him. This depresses Yukari, and he starts building sand mounds. Lilina gives it a shot and convinces her on the first try, revealing that Igarashi hates Yukari. They arrange to meet her at the cat cafe the following day. When the day comes, they wait for Igarashi outside her school, and Lilina goes directly to her to ask if Masaki is truly Yukari's partner. They decide to discuss it further at a cat cafe. Lilina bombards Igarashi with questions, but she struggles to provide clear answers. She only emphasizes her goal to protect Masaki. Lilina asks why she's pairing Yukari and Masaki and what she gains from it. Lilina worries that if it continues, it might hurt Masaki. Igarashi claims that Masaki and Yukari share a significant bond that goes beyond notifications. She reveals that she used to despise Masaki for not showing her true face until she saw a photo of Yukari in another class and realized she was in love with him, as he displayed his true self. Igarashi manages to ask why she loves him even though he's a loser. Masaki says that it doesn't matter if he doesn't understand her feelings towards him, and whoever his wife might be, that person should feel the same about him. She adds that she would cry if she weren't his wife. Lilina inquires about the notifications, and Igarashi explains that her grandmother invented the pairing system where couples are destined to love each other. That's why she wants to protect Masaki so she can be with her true love. Suddenly, Yajima appears and tells her to stop the nonsense, stating that he already knows her intentions. Igarashi says she won't say more and leaves. After this, Lilina asks Yukari if he will choose Masaki, but he's unsure why he's confused, as he's starting to feel something for Lilina. The next day, as they walk to Nisaka's brother's wedding, Yukari asks Kasaka why he doesn't seem very excited about his brother's wedding. Kasaka simply feels relieved because his parents were happy being assigned as couples, so at least his brother will also be happy. As they enter the church, a woman claiming to be the head of publicity asks if they'd be willing to do a bridal photo shoot with their respective partners. This makes them nervous, but they accept the request anyway. During the ceremony, the bride and groom make their entrance, and a video presentation starts telling the story of how the couple met. This makes Yukari think about his situation. If he marries Lilina, it's as if nothing ever happened between him and Masaki. On the other side, Lilina is having more fun than usual, and Masaki points it out. Masaki tells her that since meeting Yukari and Masaki, her life has been more enjoyable, and she thanks Lilina for that. Masaki even asks Lilina to invite her to their wedding, as she wants to see her shine on that day. As everyone gets ready for the flower toss, Yukari realizes he left his phone in the hall and goes to retrieve it. There, he finds Masaki sitting on the floor, crying. He asks her what's wrong, and she confesses that it doesn't matter if she tells him she loves him. In response, Yukari kisses her, not knowing that Lilina was watching them. The next day, Yukari's mother wakes him up, as they're heading to the hot springs with Lilina's parents. This confuses Yukari a bit, but he goes along with it. Lilina and Yukari stroll through the area, and while crossing a bridge, Lilina nearly falls, but Yukari helps her. This makes Lilina nervous, as it reminds her of the kiss between Yukari and Masaki. However, it doesn't ruin their time together, and they continue enjoying their walk. Later, when they return to the inn, they realize they'll be sharing a room, which makes Yukari anxious. He promises not to do anything this time, and Lilina agrees, as she's forgotten what happened that day. As the night goes on, Yukari struggles to sleep. Eventually, Lilina wakes him up, saying she wants to talk about something important. Yukari gets extremely nervous and starts rambling nonsense until Lilina interrupts him. She looks him in the eyes and says she wants him to choose Masaki as his partner. She tells him that thanks to their influence, she has become a better person, as she has been able to make more friends, and together they have that power. They always had a great time whenever they hung out, and it would be a waste not to be together. This led her to investigate more about the assigned couples and found out that to annul one of these assignments, they would have to lie and make it seem like they don't get along for about 6 months. This saddens Yukari, and he tells her that he doesn't want to do that, tears in his eyes. Lilina starts crying too, and they both begin to say good things about Masaki. Yukari asks if she's okay with it, wondering what would happen between him and Masaki. Lilina responds that she'll always be with him, even if they're not a couple, as she adores Masaki's smile and doesn't want to see her sad. Yukari shares the same sentiment and agrees to Lilina's proposal. Since Lilina will be assigned to another partner, she doesn't want to mess up due to not knowing how to kiss, so she asks Yukari if they can practice together, and he agrees. Here, we see both of them nervous, not knowing how to start, but they manage to do it without any issues. After these scenes, Yukari and Lilina are seen looking at the moon, contemplating that they are doing the right thing. A week later, Nisaka visits Yukari's house to deliver a gift from the previous wedding. He asks if Yukari will attend the photo shoot with Lilina and Masaki. Yukari confesses that he's a bit confused by Lilina's plan, as he wouldn't want to pretend to hate someone. Nisaka doesn't understand and asks if it's something he regrets. Yukari replies that he accepted Lilina's plan because he loves both of them and doesn't want to hurt anyone due to his foolishness. Nisaka advises him that they were the ones who fell in love with him and hurt themselves, as that's what falling in love means. He encourages Yukari to be honest with his feelings. This advice helps Yukari, who quickly goes to the photo shoot. As Lilina and Masaki prepare, Lilina wonders why it's impossible to annul the assignment. Masaki tells her not to do it, as she loves them both and would lie to protect Lilina if necessary. Suddenly, Yukari appears and tells them they look beautiful. This makes Masaki cry. Lilina comes up with the idea of taking a picture of the three of them as husband and wife, in this case, 2 wives. And so, the anime ends. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like for more anime summaries. Until next time,